Are your teams contending with multiple priorities? Are your teams running in all sorts of different directions? Are they even clashing into each other? Is value simply not flowing in your organization? Hi, I'm Zhi, hashtag the Visual Coach on LinkedIn. I believe that in order to fix your problems and address your opportunities, you need to be able to see the flow of value in your organization. So here's a typical organization. We've got a team working on a priority project. Priority number 2 comes along. So teams have to hand off that project to another team, perhaps even create a new team. And you end up with this motorway of projects in your organization, each vying against each other to be delivered. What happens then is you end up with a traffic jam. The better way of working is to get everyone lined up to a common direction and a common priority. Today, I'll be talking about some of the principles of scaled delivery, particularly using the Scaled Agile Framework. Now, these principles apply to any sort of scaling framework that we use, but for today, I will be introducing some of the practices in PI planning or planning interval planning. In a scaled delivery model, teams align to a common set of priorities. Essentially, what this means is the number 1 priority for this team is also the number 1 priority for the other teams working together. PI planning starts with a vision for the next few iterations. The teams take this vision and create an aligned plan through the process of PI planning, taking the features that would have been curated through the process of continuous exploration, then breaking those features down and sequencing the work into their iterations. Each team will have a set of these boards. Throughout the planning process, teams might discover that there are dependencies between each piece of work. For example, this body of work in iteration 2 might require some intervention from another team in iteration 1. This process allows teams to focus on the accentuation of value and the elimination of waste. Because if a body of work cannot be delivered efficiently in the planning interval, then we deprioritize that piece of work. During PI planning, as a team of teams, we might talk about the milestones that we need to commit to during the planning interval. For example, there might be a marketing campaign that has a hard date of iteration 4 that we need to line up to. There might be a certain internal release for another product that might impact the delivery of the items in this planning interval. There might be, say, a large team building event that we need to do a presentation for. These are all milestones that are really worth visualizing and displaying on your team planning boards. We also need to look at the capacity and load for each iteration to ensure that we're not overloading our teams, and we're also creating some room for the little innovative things that we need to do during our iterations. During this planning process, through the high bandwidth conversations that we have during PI planning, we might discover that there are some risks that will compromise our commitments. A risk, by definition, is an unpredictable factor that's going to introduce uncertainty against our deliverables. A risk might fall into one of 4 different categories. A risk that is resolved is a risk that is no longer a threat. A risk that is owned is a risk that someone is responsible for categorizing into one of these 3 other categories over the course of PI planning or even outside of PI planning. When a risk is accepted, it simply means that there is nothing more we can do with the risk, and we're happy to accept the likelihood and impact of the risk happening. Lastly, there are risks that are mitigated, and these are the ones where you're able to put a plan in place to reduce the likelihood or the impact of the risk. This Rome board is a live artifact that I recommend taking out of PI planning and continually revisiting it with your leadership team throughout that planning interval. The teams are then able to emerge with a set of team PI objectives, and a set of Art Agile Release Train design objectives. And that is PI planning. Simply put, teams emerge from this process with a confidence score of 1 to 5 on how confident they are on delivering to their team PI objectives and art PI objectives. I am a firm believer of using flow metrics to continually monitor our progress, to inspect and adapt, to keep us on track to delivering to our PI objectives and smashing any additional risks that pop up over the planning interval. Continuous exploration is the process of getting feedback, discovering your landscape, planning ahead, doing little experiments over the planning interval to come up with your list of potential features to take into PI planning. One of the ways to create alignment in your team prior to PI planning is to do an exercise of relative estimation of the size of features and the relative complexity of features using a visual tool like a complexity versus business value matrix. So, I hope you enjoyed this little walkthrough of the PI planning process, and you are certainly free to pop me an email, z@teamworx.co.nz. Contact me to talk about using at scale for your organization to create better visual outcomes for your team.